Hi, I'm Steve Gompertz of QRx Partners, and welcome to this week's Quality Heretic. I'm going to go a little different this week. I'm not going to talk about something that's purely quality related. We're going to talk a little bit about project management. Now, everything they say everything in life is a project anyway, and therefore everything in quality is a project. So this is applicable to those of you who are quality professionals, right? You obviously have to take on projects and manage them. And what I want to talk about is the way in which we measure our projects and report on the status of our projects, and a technique known as the earned value method. Uh, if you've done any studying for the PMP exam, the Project Management Professionals certification, this is part of the body of knowledge. So hopefully you've heard of this and are familiar with it. I don't know if everybody applies it, but you don't have to have a PMP certification to figure out a good way to apply this method. Is a better way for helping people understand how your projects are progressing. So very typically, right, when we're asked to report monthly, or whatever on our projects and how are we doing, right, we focus on a couple of things, right? We talk about our spend versus our budget. Particularly if I have this much, to work with, and I've spent, this much of it so far. How are we progressing on milestones or different activities? Hopefully we have a Gantt chart that shows these things, and so we're able to talk to, are we on schedule or not? And then how we think we're going to do at the end, right? Are we going to be on time? Are we going to be within budget? Right. These are the very typical things, management wants to hear. And as a project manager, you think this is what I need to know in order to manage my project, right? And your stakeholders, right, as well. Um, the problem here is that you're not really thinking about the value of the work being done. We're doing work, right? Striving towards certain milestones and deliverables, but what's the actual value of what we're doing this month, what we got done? We're not usually talking in terms of management's language, which is dollars, particularly around schedule, the budget they get, right? Although it's a little iffy to just say, well, I have $100,000 budget and I've spent 50,000 so far. Okay. Is that good or bad? Well, if it's a 12-week project and this is the first week and I've already spent half my budget, it sounds bad, right? But not necessarily, because maybe that's how it's designed. But that's what the kind of stuff is missing there, right? And at the end, then they want to know, well, are you going to finish on time? Are you going to stay within your budget? And as project managers, we give these assurances, don't trust me, this is good. Your credibility is at stake here, right? As to whether or not you can actually deliver. And management's sitting there going, I didn't really hear anything that definitively tells me I should have confidence in this. And that's kind of the failing that we see today. And the earned value approach is meant to address that. So it relies on three variables. There's the planned value, what you thought something was going to cost to do, right? Each deliverable, each milestone. There's the actual cost, right? What did it cost for us to achieve those things? And what was that work actually worth? How much work did we get done, and what was actually done? What did that look like in terms of the value it provided versus the plan? And from those three variables, we can calculate a number of things, but most importantly, we can talk to schedule variance and cost variance with that known. So looking at planned value, right? This is, again, what the work should have cost, what we thought it was going to cost us to do each element of our project. Actual cost is pretty straightforward, right? It's what did we actually spend in this time frame working on those things. And then the more difficult one is the earned value. What was that work worth, right? What did we accomplish towards the goal in that time frame, right? And there's lots of different ways to address this. I'm not going to be able to do a deep dive on this, obviously, today. I'm just trying to give you a flavor for this. If you want to study it, you'll learn more about different approaches to deciding what is the earned value of work. How do I take credit for what we've gotten done, and so forth. But it's there and it's applicable even to very complex projects. So with that in mind, right, if we measure those three things, if we were looking at something like schedule variance, now the formula for that is you take the earned value and subtract the planned value, and that tells you your variance in the schedule. So let's say the work you got done was worth $5,000, right? But it should have been worth 10,000. So we're at a minus 5,000 for schedule variance. And if we take that minus 5,000 and divide that by the planned value of 10,000, then we get it that we are 50% behind schedule. We achieved about $5,000 worth of work. It should have been worth 10,000, right? That's now saying you're off your schedule then. You haven't fully delivered. That 10,000 represents a complete deliverable. The 5,000 means we're only halfway there. So we are 50% behind schedule at this point. And then the other element is cost, right? We want to know how we're doing in cost variance. And cost variance is taking that earned value and subtracting the actual cost. So again, if we had what we got done was worth about $5,000 and it cost us 10,000, I'm just using really round numbers to make it easy. And it cost us 10,000 to achieve that. That's a minus $5,000 cost variance. You do that as the percentage calculation by dividing that CV by the earned value, and you realize you're 100% over budget. It should have been worth 10,000. You only got $5,000 worth of work for $10,000 is what they're saying, right? So you're 100% over budget. So very quickly, we now know we're 50% behind schedule and 100% over budget. We are not in good shape. That was a horrible example, I know, but just gives you an idea, right? And hopefully your numbers come out positive on both ends and shows you you're tracking well. But that's what you get really quickly with just these three variables, which are fairly easy to figure out for your project. And now you get a very definitive measure of where am I at from these two perspectives, and something that management will understand much better than sort of this storytelling that we typically do in our project status meetings. And so here's an example of a project, right? Just tracked over the first 3 months of the project and what's happening there. And again, you plug in the numbers and out come, those results. And what we're seeing here is that, okay, so we're 25% over budget and 14% behind schedule. But notice month by month, that 14% represents a huge improvement, right? If I go back and I look and I go, February started out, that the start of this project was not good, right? We were 50% over on our spending and 67% behind on our schedule. This did not get out the gate well, right? March looks like we took some serious action here, got our cost variance under control, got our schedule better. We're hearing we're getting work done better and at less cost. And now April maybe represents kind of the normalizing of this. And so, all right, we're still over budget, but not as bad as we were. But we're continuing to manage the schedule well, right? And then you could just obviously you can keep this going month by month. The advantage here is that this gives you trending as well, right? So it's not just a point in time, but it will let you do some advance or looking forward on things. So there are additional formulas that I'm not going to get into today that would let you explain where do you think you're going to end up. So using this approach, the benefits are you get a truer picture of what's happening rather than an anecdotal approach. I mentioned these predictive formulas. There's one, that tells you what do I think the budget's going to look like when I'm done based on my current trends. And the same thing can happen for your schedule, right? So that you get an actual calculated, if we continue the way we're going, this is where we should end up, right? And so then you get to have those discussions. Are we likely to hit the targets or not? Again, you're speaking management's language, so they're going to now understand. Now, that could be good or bad, right? If they understand that you're doing poorly, right? That's not a good thing, but you could be more honest and transparent that way. And again, because you have this ability to add in some predictive calculations, you give them, you give yourself more credibility that you actually know what you're talking about, right? So rather than just making promises, trust me, I'm a really good project manager, I'll get this under control. You can actually say the numbers show me that I'm heading in the right direction, right? And so suddenly the stress comes off of everybody involved. Your stakeholders now understand where you're at, and you have a much better opportunity, right, to continue as you're going and let them not mess with you so much. So I'm curious to see if anybody is using earned value in their project management efforts. So let's please get some discussion going in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you at next week's Quality Heretic.